Hey everyone, I'm Susannah Baker, and I'm your host for the Never for Nothing podcast. This is the place where I help us understand that everything God allows in our lives is there for a beautiful purpose. Our struggles and joys are never for nothing. God uses them all to draw us into deeper relationship with Himself. This is Season 3, Episode 5, and the last 4 episodes we've talked about Psalm 139 and knowing God and being known specifically as moms, and how that knowledge changes us and our parenting from the inside out. Today, I have a special guest with me, Grace Thweatt, to talk about the practical implications of parenting little ones. Grace lives in Dallas, Texas with her husband and their 2 kids, ages 4 and 2. Grace founded and writes for Renewed Motherhood, a ministry that helps moms connect their faith to their motherhood with its published content and in-person gatherings. Her writing for moms has also been published with organizations such as Risen Motherhood and MOPS. In this season, Grace is passionate about coming alongside other moms and encouraging them in the little years as she walks through them herself. It's a privilege to have Grace with us to share her wisdom on the Never for Nothing podcast today. So for the last 4 episodes, we've been making our way through Psalm 139, talking about the ways God knows us, where He knows us, how His knowledge transforms us from the inside out. And this is especially helpful to moms who are raising little ones, because motherhood is a beautiful gift from God, but it's hard. We feel unknown and uncared for a lot of times, and we're so busy taking care of everyone else. We need to remember that we're known by God in the very practical aspects of motherhood. And so it's such a privilege to have Grace Thweatt on with me today. And she is a wise mom and just a wise woman. I'm always so impressed and challenged by the truths that she shares from God's Word and her beautiful liturgies and writings that she shares with her ministry, Renewed Motherhood. So Grace, welcome to the Never for Nothing podcast today.
Thank you, Susannah. Thank you for your kind words, too. I appreciate that.
Of course. So just as a reminder, tell us how long have you been married and the names and ages of your kids?
Yeah. So my husband and I just celebrated our 6th year anniversary, which is crazy. It feels like a long time, but it's also flown by at the same time, too. And then we have 2 kids. William is our oldest, and he's 4. And then Rosie is our youngest, and she's 2.
Okay. So you're in the thick of it with little ones, for sure.
Yeah.
It's so fun, but it's physically exhausting in so many ways. So Jason, last fall, he sent me this article from the Wall Street Journal, and the title just made me laugh because it was so true. The title is "Parenting is Hazardous to Your Health, the Surgeon General Warns." And there was an official warning put out by the Surgeon General that parents are under dangerous levels of stress and how isolating and lonely it is. And I was like laughing out of one side of my mouth and like going, yeah, that's so true. The other side.
I know. I saw that too. And I was like, honestly, this is very validating right now because I'm struggling.
Yes. So what have you seen with moms? And what are some of the biggest challenges and common struggles that mothers of young children face?
Yeah. It's interesting because parenting in a sense hasn't changed. It's always been the same job. But I do feel like generationally, people seem to be struggling more, like new moms today. And I don't know if, our generation is just more like tuned into maybe what they're feeling and express it more readily, or if it actually has gotten more challenging in some ways. I think 2 ways that I was thinking of that might have played into like making it harder today is the isolation. You mentioned that. I feel like more and more we live less communally. And I think, it's interesting, like with my ministry, Renewed Motherhood, will send out like polls sometimes. And one question we always ask is, what's your biggest struggle in motherhood right now? And I feel like 80% of the responses are like, I'm lonely and I need community. And so I think, it goes hand in hand with kind of what you're saying about Psalm 139 and how it's such an encouragement to moms, because I feel like so many of us are longing to feel seen and known, and we don't feel that because we either at home alone with our kids, or for working moms, really all your time is just going to like family and work, and there's not a lot of time for community. So I think isolation is a big one. And then the other thing that I definitely feel a lot, and I think other moms might struggle with, is anxiety over your parenting, like feeling like I'm not doing it right. That's the other big thing I hear from moms in our ministry is um like I want to know how to be a good Christian mom. Like I want to know how to like parent right, discipline right. Like there's a lot of anxiety over like I'm not doing it right and I need more information. And I kind of wonder if this is tied to like the social media age, and we see so many different like tips and tricks for parenting and parenting styles, and it can all be kind of overwhelming where we're like, did I choose the right one? Like am I using the right discipline style or the right, sleep training methods? And I think at the same time, like so much is coming out in psychology showing like how important the little years are for our kids, like how much happens developmentally, 0 to 5 years old. And so we read that and we're like, oh my gosh, the pressure's on, like um, it's just kind of a weighty realization sometimes of like uh, how big of a deal the little years are. And I think instead of sometimes just taking that and running with like, okay, this is a responsibility I've been entrusted with, like my work is important, sometimes we can take it too far and start stressing out about how good we're doing as a mom.
Yeah, I think you're so right. I remember I hit my biggest season of anxiety I've ever had when we brought our youngest daughter home from China. And partly because I felt like there were all these methods and ways of doing secure attachment and parenting an adopted child that might be different from how I parented my biological children, but I didn't know what those things were. And so I was worried, like, how am I going to figure this out? And I knew every day I was waking up failing. I wasn't going to be enough for her, for my other 3 children. And it just felt weighty. And I didn't sleep at night. And I can so relate to that feeling of, I feel like I'm failing before the day even starts. And I just don't even know how to do this or make this right. It's a bad feeling.
Totally. I know. Yeah, I feel like after the birth of my second was like the most anxious season for me, because I was with one, I was like, okay, I can like try to do it all. And then when there was two, I was like, okay, I'm gonna fail someone today. Kind of like you were saying, like I know I've already failed. Um, and I'm sure just like the more kids, the harder it gets. But I have a older mom friend who gave me really good advice for this. She was like, just like ask God to fill in the gaps. Like accept that you can't be everything to everyone and you can't be perfect, and like ask God to, he is the perfect parent to our kids, not us. And so just kind of like entrusting him with our kids to be the perfect father to him, which, it's not our role to be the perfect parent, and trusting that God will kind of like fill in the gaps where we're bound to make mistakes and not, show up in the way our kids need us to. So that's kind of, I feel like I just have to pray that all the time and constantly remind myself of that.
Totally. And it's interesting you say that, and that's where the healing started coming for me, was realizing I can't be the perfect parent. I'm not supposed to. And so just embracing my weakness. I mean, it's 2 Corinthians about where Paul says that our weakness is actually strength, because it helps us depend on the Lord. Like he has to be the perfect parent. We can't.
Totally.
And there's a certain grace that comes with going, for this, my kids have Jesus. For this, I will put aside money for their counseling fund now because they're going to need it, because I'm not a perfect parent, but they have him.
Right. Totally. Mm-hmm.
And so I think as I look back as well, healing started coming for me, not just with our adopted child when we brought her home, but with my biological children, that even before her is where God really started working on my heart. And it was with my study of Psalm 139 and letting him go back and work on my own story and helping him, giving him access to different parts of my heart where I felt stuck in shame, or I still felt stuck in failure, or I felt unseen. And as he began to work on me, and as I opened up in my story with him, it started to spill over in a good way into my parenting. And so, from your perspective, why is it important to work on your own story as a mom? Because like you said, we can go on social media. We can see there's all these tips and tricks and hacks for motherhood, when really it's kind of like what Jesus said in Luke 10 to Mary and Martha, like only one thing is needed. It's the good part. Do that and seek first his kingdom, and everything else is going to be added. So how does it help in the long run for you to work on your own story as a mom in the season of parenting young children?
Totally. Yeah, I totally agree. I think I found that like the things in me that I try to like ignore or push down or not acknowledge end up controlling me, you know? Um, I can't control them. They end up, coming out and making me act out in ways I don't want to be acting out in. And so I feel like motherhood in a sense has kind of like forced me to deal with some parts of my story just because I've seen the effects of them showing up in my parenting. Like, to get more specific, and this goes into what we were talking about before, but I think a big part of like my story and my narrative has been believing that like my identity and my worth is based on my performance, and my performance is judged by the standard of perfectionism. And I don't think anyone obviously told me that at any point in my life or taught me that. It's just the way I interpreted my experience, over the years. And I think even if we had perfect parents, we're all going to grow up with some sort of narrative that is holding us back in a sense. And that's just the case for everyone. It's just, yeah, I think we all have stuff to work through. And so for me, I think I realized I was sinking into like shame spirals a lot whenever I felt like, oh, I wasn't being a good mom, or I wasn't like, I should be having more patience. I should be having more fun right now. And the shame would kind of like take me out of the moment and take away a lot of the joy in motherhood. And then I've noticed also that it's kind of teaching my kids that like their worth is based on their performance too. And over time, as I've started like identifying that narrative and holding it up to the truth of like my worth is not based on my performance. And when I am struggling, that's just something I can bring to the Lord and ask for help with and depend on him. And he is delighted in that. He does not want my perfect performance. He wants my dependence. And I feel like as I've worked on my own story with that, I've even seen really just in my 4-year-old, like, I see him struggle with shame. Like when he messes up, it's so sad, but sometimes he'll be like, I need to go hide now. And I'm like, no, like, buddy, like you don't have to carry that. Like God wants you to say, if you've hurt your little sister, if you've hurt mommy, like say, I'm sorry, and say, I'm sorry to God. And then you can live in freedom. But like, I can't preach that to him if I'm not practicing that myself. And so I think it's just been cool because it is hard work, the journey of like working on yourself, working through your own struggles with perfectionism or whatever it is. But it's cool to see how your kids benefit from that too. And like they're watching, I think they understand so much more than we think. And like he can tell if I feel like I'm having an off day and I start just getting more and more in a bad mood and kind of self-sabotaging in a sense. Like he's picking up on those patterns. And so when I can step in and go, okay, wait, I'm like walking in this narrative again. I'm telling myself I'm not a good mom, so I don't even deserve to have a good day. If I can stop it there and like bring this to the Lord and then ask him for help and choose to live in freedom, that's modeling that for my kids too. So I think it is crazy just the tie between, what we're doing, the work we're doing in our own stories and how it kind of sets the example for our kids.
Yes. I can look back on when parenting my girl, now they're 18, 16, 14, and 11, but in the little years, especially those, I had, 6, 4, 2, and I felt like I parented out of anger so many times. And I would catch myself like being getting angry at one of them, or, losing my temper. And if I could have stepped back in that moment, I feel like I was so angry most of the time at myself, that I was failing them in some way, that I was afraid that my oldest is more kind of an introvert like me. I was afraid that she was going to experience rejection or be left out. And so I would get angry, like, hey, you need to do this, or pushing her to do something that maybe God didn't design her to do. But I look back and I'm so sad that I parented out of my own fear and anxiety and put that on them. And if I wish I had started my own work earlier, because I think it would have helped me have more grace, like you're saying, for them.
Totally.
But so what are some practical ways you work on your own story, or like take time to do that in the midst of being a working mom, having little ones?
Yeah. I think just like carving out some time to be still. And I know that that's so hard with young kids, but like what started working for me is just to wake up 30 minutes before my kids, and I just go sit on our back porch with some tea, and I'm not doing a Bible study. Like I'm just like sitting and kind of noticing like what thoughts are coming up, and like what am I feeling in my body right now? Oh, I feel kind of anxious. I wonder what that's about, and just getting curious. And this part's hard for me because I always want to like judge and fix what's there, but trying to just like let what's be come to the surface so that I can like most honestly bring that before the Lord. I feel like having that like intentional solitude and space to let some of the things surface that maybe in the busyness of our days we don't even realize are there. And then I think the other thing, and I'm like so much a work in progress with this, but like in the moments where, like you talked about, like you feel anger coming up with your kids, or like just before reacting, like trying to like pause and just go, okay, like what am I feeling? Like trying to make sense of it before just acting out of it, and even just like a small, I'm always reminded of in the book, Hind's Feet on High Places, the main character, she's, it's a spiritual allegory. And on her journey, whenever she needs help, all she has to do is like, shepherd, come near, like just call out to the good shepherd. And I'm just reminded, like, that's all a prayer has to be in the moment. Like, I don't even have to have what I'm feeling articulated before God. Like, the moment I feel like anger or overwhelmed, just like, God, come quickly, like, come be with me in this. So yeah, I feel like those are a few things I've been working on.
That's so great. And I think having the discipline, or, just the ability to wake up in the morning and have 30 minutes before your kids get up and just pausing, right? I mean, just taking an assessment almost of your heart and soul and where am I? And then it probably gives you ability to then pause throughout the day. It's like a muscle, if we're not going to do it at the start of or at some point in our day, it's very unlikely we're going to do it in the heat of a moment. And so being disciplined enough, or having the rhythm, I think that's a more fun word, having a rhythm of intentional times of pausing so that you're going to do it and stop and say, wait. I feel like I'm about to explode here. Let me step away for a minute. I remember you told me something a couple years ago that was so helpful for me, but I was asking you about your work rhythms, and you said you had started having your quiet time later in the day because you were paying attention more to your body rhythms, and how you're more actually alert and awake later in the day, or like when your kids are resting. And so I actually kind of have started to do that, and it's helped me a lot, because I've been always I have to do it first thing, but half the time I'm just trying to wake up. I'm so groggy. And so That was really helpful for me, what you shared. Just paying attention to your own body and how it works. And then, plugging into that time with the Lord during the day too.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's hard. Like, obviously, we can't set up our day like ideally 100%, given like, young kids have agendas of their own. But I do think as much as we can pay attention to like, where am I going to get the most out of my time? Like, if I know I'm really sleepy in the morning, maybe not the best time to try to like read and study my Bible. And I think even with um, work, I try to actually like work out before I do my quiet time. And I feel like that even helps me like work out any like stress or like anxiety I might have been feeling to get to a more grounded place. Just like being strategic as much as we can with how we set up our days, I feel it can make a big difference in the long run.
That's really good. That's really good. Okay, so let's talk about discipline for just a second, because I remember that was such a huge part of raising little ones. It's a huge part of raising teenagers too. It never kind of goes away. But how does working on your own story, how does being known by God and knowing Him help you in the area of discipline with your kids? And what are some practical ways that you found to be helpful with discipline with a 4-year-old and 2-year-old?
Yeah, and I love like your advice and just wisdom from your own story here, because we're figuring that one out on discipline. But I feel like from a big picture level, um, I have found like I can't show my kids what I don't show to myself. And so if I have not learned how to show self-compassion, I'm going to be faking compassion to my kids. Like, and this is something I've had to work on because I like don't naturally have a lot of self-compassion. Like my inner narrative a lot of times is like, come on, Grace, like, let's go. Let's do it right this time. Why did you mess up? And that's the way I'm going to view other people if that's the way I'm talking to myself. And I do notice that tendency with my kids, like, oh my gosh, like you're doing this again. We just worked on this like yesterday or 10 minutes ago. Um, but the more that I've, I guess, learned how to um just like view myself and my own story with compassion and like speaking like my inner monologue or dialogue being like, yeah, Grace, that's hard. Like, of course you're struggling. Like it's hard to be a mom. This is all new. Give yourself time. Like people don't naturally grow quickly. Like is the more I can say those kinds of things to myself, the more I find myself being able to bring compassion into my discipline and applying that same principle to my kids of like, yeah, you're a 2-year-old. Of course you're going to, do the same thing over and over again. Of course you're not going to be perfect. Um, so I think that's been big. And then as far as discipline, I feel like one thing my husband and I have tried to like, because we're always kind of trying out new things, even like both kids are so different with what discipline they respond to. But I feel like the one consistent thing is we really didn't want to instill like a culture of striving with our discipline. Like, okay, you need to work on this and you need to be better next time. But in our teaching and in our discipline, pointing our kids back to like the only way you're going to change is by God's grace and independence upon God. And so that normally just looks like after talking through like what it was, that they did wrong and what we want it to look like next time, just praying with them, like a quick prayer, like, God, will you please, help Rosie's heart to trust that mommy wants what's best for her and to obey. Just simply kind of like instilling that idea that like, even though she doesn't totally understand it at this time, but like pointing her back to God's grace being the source of her behavior.
I remember too that stage and age, just the importance of consistency. Discipline always seemed to happen at the worst possible time. It's like when you're trying to walk out the door, and it's like they know it too. They wait until they know you really don't have time to do anything about it, or you can't. You're in a public place. I had one like that. She would like scream at the top of her lungs when she knew Mom can't really do anything right now, and just learning how to be consistent even when it was inconvenient for me. That was huge. And I had to, and it was inconvenient. Like you have to leave places sometimes. Sometimes you have to be late. I mean, but so that they know my desire for ultimately, it's your good, it's your holiness is, is more important than for me to look a certain way to other people, or behavior modification. You know, I, but just learning how to be consistent and really desire ultimately in the long run what was best for them, even when it was inconvenient for me. That was really hard.
Yeah. And am I remembering right that did you have like post-it notes around your house with verses or like reminders on them?
Yes.
That's a great idea.
Yes. Because inevitably, like in the heat of the moment when your kid is yelling and saying no and throwing the hot dog across the room, like that is not the moment to go, what is a good discipline measure right here where I'm not going to get, because you just want to choke them out, So I feel like I would hit these walls and I would go have time I'd get quiet and I'd just write in my journal, I'd pray and really think strategically, like, what is going to change their heart, and write it out and for common patterns I was seeing in behavior. And then I'd put them on sticky notes on the kitchen cabinets in a place where I could open it quickly and go, okay, here's your consequence. This is what fits that for you.
Right. That's such a good idea. I need to do that.
It was helpful. But hey, I'm still doing it with you still have to do it with teenagers too. Being consistent when it's inconvenient at 1:30 in the morning or whatever it is. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so what are some other practical ways you've dealt with struggles of motherhood? Like what rhythms have you incorporated into your life to be known? We kind of talked about being known by God, but by other people and by community, because it is parenting's lonely. So what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I feel like we've kind of touched on the being known by God ones. I think for me, like having that still time with him in the morning really helps set the tone for my day of like abiding in him and not striving. And then I do have like a short Bible study time later during my kids' rest time, where I'm really more like studying there. But I think I love starting the day with just like a posture of like stillness and abiding. Um, and then I think on the community level, this has been something I've really struggled with because I'm so introverted. And so whenever I get time, I'm like, I just want to be by myself. Like, I don't recharge by going to like a group hang at night after kids have gone down. Or like if on the weekend, if my husband takes the kids, I'm like, I kind of just like want to go be by myself and not go hang out with someone. So it's been a balance of, okay, I do value relationships. And so I want to like get stuff on the calendar so that I am cultivating those relationships, even if I know I'm going to feel drained afterwards. Like I know this is important. So that's one thing, is like putting stuff on the calendar because I know I won't do it otherwise. Um, so like I found a group of moms and we meet an evening like every other week, and that's felt doable for me. Um, it seems like, I don't know, sometimes it's nice just to like get together with other moms and even just like parent alongside each other. Like I feel like play dates now that my kids are older don't like, I can hardly talk to the other mom, but we're kind of just like doing it alongside of each other, and there's a camaraderie in that. But I think the other thing I'd say to that I've been learning recently is not to compare and like not to look at the mom that like is posting on Instagram her like 4 different mom group hangouts and think like, "Oh my gosh, I don't have friends. I'm falling behind." And recognizing like God has wired us each differently. What personally, like when I'm really honest, what do I want and have bandwidth for in this season? And I think my husband told me the other day he read that introverts have like 1 to 2 close friends. And I think when you compare that to an extrovert, you can feel like you're doing something wrong. But there's a lot of freedom, like if you are, not as social and just accepting, like, oh, it's okay in this season when I'm with my kids a lot and like have very little bandwidth, if social rhythms for me look like one outing every other week or like a coffee with a good friend, once a month or something like that. So yeah, I think just like getting honest with what you desire and have capacity for in this season. And then, on a practical note, it's helped me to get those on the calendar and schedule them.
And I think that's so good about not comparing, being comfortable. Ultimately, it goes back to, for me, I know I compared myself a ton when I was a mom with young kids, and I always felt like there was something wrong with me because I was an introvert. Like I should have more, be social. And but it goes back to, like, again, Psalm 139, we're fearfully and wonderfully made. God made you purposefully, and just being okay with that, embracing your limits, embracing how God made you, and knowing the way that God made you is what your kids need. They need you to be you. They don't need you to be like the other mom. Like, I wish I had known that, understood that more when my kids were younger,
Uh-huh. And I think things like, if you work part-time or it's like a creative outlet or, whatever it is that you're doing that kind of recharges you, if it's not social, I sometimes can believe the lie of like, oh, this is just selfish. It's just for me. But remembering that like this is going to flow back into my family, like me being recharged and more fully myself is going to affect like I don't know, like the home that I'm cultivating, like who I'm showing up for my kids to be. And so it's not selfish to take care of ourselves, and to do the things that make us feel whole. It ends up, directly impacting our kids too.
Yeah, that's so good. We've talked some about that too. Just how have you found balancing your ministry with your children and the ways that they need you? Like, what are some good rhythms there? It's like, talk to working moms or ministry moms for a minute. Yeah. What does that look like?
Oh, that's the question. It's hard to, I'm definitely still figuring it out. And I think everyone is wired so differently. So I think that's the first place to start. Like you said, like not compare. But what's worked for me is not trying to work when I'm with my kids. And I know some people don't have that option, but it's really helped me. Like I have a routine where I have a babysitter come 3 mornings a week, and that's the time when I work. And I don't try to work outside of that, or else my attention is too split, and like my work's not getting the attention it should be. My kids aren't, like nobody wins, and I'm stressed out. So I think like having a rhythm and knowing like these are the times when I'm gonna be getting my work done, and then the rest, I'm on mom duty. Um, and then I think, and I haven't even done this. I need to, but like setting lower expectations too for my work of like maybe this isn't the season to go for like, this big goal that I could go for like once my kids are older out of the house, like lowering the pressure and the rush, like realizing like, okay, this season with littles is probably pretty short in the grand scheme of things, and I have time. And so I don't have to like show up with this rush and energy with my work. Um yeah, so I think those are two of the big things. And I constantly struggle with like shame and guilt around work too, thinking like, oh, I should be like giving 24/7 of my time to my kids. And so I think really just like bringing that before the Lord and letting him speak into that shame. And maybe there is a conviction there that like, oh, I should step away from work for a season. Again, everyone's stories are different, but I think just not staying alone with that shame or those doubts, like talking to a friend about it, talking to community about it, bringing it before the Lord. Um, and like you said, remembering that like he did wire us each a specific way. And if you're wired and created and like you're at your best self and the best version of yourself as a mom, like when you have work, just remembering that and holding on to that, even when it's hard to believe.
Yeah, that's so good. I think too, I look back, so I homeschooled we did a homeschool model for 9 years where I would homeschool 3 days a week, and then they went to campus 2 days a week. And I look back I'm like, how did I do that? Now, I was talking to another mom about that the other day. We're like, how did we do that? But that's where I learned good limits, because like you said, I knew in order for me to be the person God made me to be, a whole person, I had to write and I had to teach. Now that didn't mean I could do it like every day, all day, But it meant I had 2 days a week with these very firm boundaries of this is where I can do this. And it just made me like get my work done, and it helped me tackle being so afraid of failure or perfection. I was like, it is what it is. And then I would be with my kids, and it was always a struggle. It was always hard. It wasn't perfect, but it helped me learn those healthy limits. And then now as I have more time, it's true. Like it will not last forever, the season that you're in. I have more time and you can tackle bigger projects and do bigger things. And you see God's, grace it will be there when you need it to do more. But learning limits is so good. And learning like it's okay to be a whole person. Like God made you not just to be a mom. He made you also with certain gifts and talents and things that you and your kids need to see you pour into the world around you. They need to see life is bigger than just them, right?
Right. Totally. And I think that goes for, working and non-working moms, like even if it's, a hobby, a creative outlet, or you're really recharged by being with friends, like to hold on to those things. Because I totally agree. Like I think as our kids get older, if they think that they're our whole world, that's a lot of pressure on them. And so it's almost better. It is better for them, for us to regain or to hold on to our sense of who we are as an individual for their sake.
That's so good. Okay, so let's talk about marriage for just a minute, because marriage is hard in the little years. I remember with young children, I put so much pressure on my husband, on Jason, to be my person and to fill my needs and to like read my mind, But he was exhausted too. He was working, and he had his own wounds and his own journey of healing. And what's a healthy perspective of the role our husbands should play in our lives when we're in the season of life with young children? Like what, how, and what are some rhythms that you have found with your husband where you are, of course, you're each other's greatest support, but you're also not holding on to him for dear life, choking him out, which is what I did with my husband a lot of the time.
I know, I get that. Yeah, I think that's such a good question and thought. I mean, even just thinking back to like, I feel like the tension kind of starts the second you have the baby. Like your experience as a mom is different than their experience as a dad in a way they will never be able to relate to. Like I remember, um, my husband is like so kind and compassionate, but just like a week after I had my daughter, and he was like, "So what are your plans for like work? Like what are you excited for work in the next year?" And I was like, "What are you talking about? Like I am not thinking about work right now. I don't even like I can't even get the laundry done right now." And we were just in different places, and I think as our kids get older, like we've kind of like gone back a little bit into the same world, but I feel like it's been so important for me to like cultivate friendships with other moms, just so I'm not looking to my husband to like, I need you to understand everything, because there are things only another mom can understand. And I think as women, we do desire so deeply to be like felt and understood, and our husbands can try, but there's only so much you can like empathize with things like morning sickness or like nursing or like mom guilt, when you're not a mom. So I think that's one thing. And then I think the other thing that I've been realizing um is like my husband is different from me, and that's a good thing. And I have this idea in my head of like what a dad should do, and my husband doesn't always like meet those ideas in my mind. And a lot of times I can try to like change, like, oh, well, like when you play with the kids, you shouldn't take a phone call. Like you should be fully present. But maybe that's good for them to see that, like, okay, dad's with me, and then he can step away and do something. Like I don't have the right formula. And I notice myself thinking I do a lot of times and trying to put that on my husband and make him parent in the same way I parent. And my mom actually reminded me of this the other day. Like God wired men and women differently. He wired every individual differently. And it's the differences your spouse brings are a good thing. And they're a good thing for your kids too. And so let them be who they are. And that doesn't mean like we don't bring something up or that there's never room to say like, "Hey, I wonder if we can talk about like this. I wonder if we should be doing it differently." But I'm just learning to like do that far less, and to pray about it before I bring something up instead of just like bringing so many things up like, "Don't do this, try this. This is how I would do it." Um, just kind of like letting him do his thing, and then if it really is sticking with me, praying about it first and seeing if it's something that I want to bring up.
Yes, that's so good. I think too, I remember I felt like every time we sat down to talk, it was about the kids. And we can still have that struggle. And I had a counselor actually tell me like, hey, you don't have to tell him this, but in your mind be like, okay, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're going to talk about kids. And then Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, just be together, you know? And that actually really helped me. I kept a note on my phone of like, okay, on these 2 days, whenever it is, we're going to talk about these things. But again, it comes faster than you realize where it's just going to be the two of you again. And cultivating that friendship and that relationship and like, oh yeah, I like you. You know, it's not always about our kids. Um,
Totally. I love that. We do the same thing with keeping a note on our phones of like things we want to talk about because it is easy to just switch into default mode when you're together of like, okay, what do we need to get on the calendar? What's going on with our kid? Like all the practical life stuff. And so we keep a note where it's just like interesting thoughts we have during the day or like something we want to remember to tell them. And so then when we sit down, it helps me to like jog my memory when I'm tired at night to like go back and look at like, oh yeah, I wanted to share these things with him.
yes. Yes. And I think too, going back to working on your own story, being known by God, ultimately, He is your person. And the more I realized that in marriage and the more I leaned into the Lord, it took the pressure off for Jason to be that person. And there was more grace for him. It's like you were talking about grace for your kid, you having self-care, learning how to give grace to yourself. It's also like helped me give grace to my husband. And so again, it goes back to that time with the Lord. Like to me, that's where it starts. Health in our marriage, health with our parenting. It's got to be that you are having time with the Lord as your father, to be parented by him, to be known by him.
Yeah. I feel like I can tend to look to my husband to feel like secure in life. And so if my husband is struggling or going through something, I'm like, well, now I'm going to be going through something and struggling. Like I want him to be good all the time so I can be good. And obviously he's human and that's not going to happen. And so I feel like over the years that we've been married in a time where he is, he comes home and he's stressed or he's tired, like, and I'm like, oh, he's not giving me what I want. Like learning to look to the Lord whose perfect presence is always with me and who never changes and who can be that grounding, like stable connection for me when my husband can't always be that.
Yes. So good. Okay, one last kind of big question, but I want to talk about friendship for a moment. Because I think that was a place that was really hard for me as a mom with young kids. And I just feel like there's a lot of pressure to find your person or your group and to have your kids fit into a certain group or into a certain mold. Do you feel that pressure? And how does it affect your kids? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, for sure. I was actually I see a counselor once a month, and I was telling her a couple months ago, I was like, I think I feel lonely. And like, I never have felt this in life before. Like, I've normally, because I'm introverted, I don't need all that much socially. And I've just always like felt good. And I just was like feeling a deeper need. I don't know if it's the desire to like connect with other moms, like we were talking about. And I thought she gave such good advice. She was like, that's so great that you see it. And it's also not something to just like sit in and like pout about, but to like see it as an opportunity. Like, okay, I have this desire. This is a place where I have opportunity to go like make new friendships and initiate. Like it's not out of my control, even though it can feel so at times. Um, and I think everyone is probably feeling the same thing we are, where they're like, I'm tired. I'm kind of waiting for someone to reach out to me. And so like being that person, if you are desiring, more friendships, more a bigger relational aspect to your life, like being the initiator, um, even if it's not like getting together, but just like sending a text of like, "Hey, like, how was your day?" Or like, "This was kind of hard for me. Can you be praying for this?" I think little things like that mean so much, even if it's just a text or a voice memo, just that point of connection. Um, but I think also kind of like we were talking about before with work, knowing your limits, like kind of accepting like, okay, there's going to be a season where I'm going to have more time and bandwidth for friendship too. And so like being reasonable at the same time with like what are the few relationships that I do want to pour in and not try to like do it all and burn ourselves out so that we don't have anything left to give to our kids, because your question of like how does it affect your kids? I feel like my kids love like intentional connection with me. Like they talk all the time. Like they want to just be like, just me and them talking. And so I feel like they honestly don't love social things. Like they don't love play dates and they love to just be at home. And so taking that into consideration, and it doesn't mean like, always giving them everything that they want, but like, giving us permission of like, you know what, we're not going to have anything on the schedule today. And we're just going to stay home and be just us and play just us. And you have my undivided attention, not putting the pressure on like, well, I've got to like make my mom group happen and we've got to meet up this many times a week, so it's all a balance, I think, of yes, initiating and pursuing relationships, but also knowing that it is a harder season for social things.
Yes. I think that's so why you're so seems so grounded and wise in that area. I think I made friends too much of, I just put too much security in them. Like I even if I'm more of an introvert or my kids are want to be home, we have to go do things with people, so that we're not left out. Or so there was just some fear that drove that for me.
Yeah.
And so I love that I think that's so wise. Like pay attention to how you're wired, how your kids are wired. They don't need a trip to the zoo with 10 best friends. They need you. They need you to look in their eyes and sit on the floor and play with them. And
And I think too, like, um, recognizing the relationships that are there, like we have my sweet neighbor is like one life stage ahead of me, has kids in middle school and high school, and we see her all the time in the driveway and like just 5-minute conversation here and there and recognizing like, Grace, that is a friendship you're cultivating there. Because sometimes I can feel like, oh, I'm not doing anything. I should be doing more. But recognizing the little ways in which it is present in this season. Or, maybe it's like at the park, you run into a mom that you kind of know and y'all talk for a few minutes. Like that is something. And I think one thing that's helped me just feel a more like grounded sense of connection in a season where I can't do a lot is like praying for the relationships and the friends I do have, in a way, like praying for them by name or texting like, hey, how can I pray for you? And even like giving them a day of the week. Like, okay, on Thursday, I'm going to pray for these two friends. And on Tuesday, I'm going to pray for this friend. It makes me feel like more connected to them and like they're a bigger part of my life, even if I'm not like seeing them every week, And so that's something I started doing recently. And I feel like it's in a way brought me a lot of like a felt experience of being closer to my friends in this season.
that's so great. What a great idea. I love that. Thank you. Well, is there anything else that's on your heart to share? Anything for moms in the season of life with littles, or ways to be known by God? Or
I actually, I would love to hear from you on this last thought. One thing I was thinking about, um, is how much of like the years with littles can kind of feel like surviving, um, where it's like, maybe you're not sleeping a lot with a newborn. Honestly, there's so many sleep aggressions that go beyond the newborn years. Like I feel like we're constantly tired. Or I think about, moms who have like a toddler and they're pregnant and they're like sick and tired and just surviving. Like there's a lot of a sense of like, I'm just surviving, I'm not thriving. I would love to just hear from you, like if you have any encouragement or advice of how to hold on to joy in those moments where you feel like you're just surviving, um, and like stay connected to the Lord, who, ultimately is our source of joy when we may not even feel like we have the energy to like show up and like do a Bible study or something. Yeah, I would love to know if you have any thoughts on that.
So good. It's actually validating to hear you say that, because so much of those years of having little ones and being pregnant like every other year and
Yeah.
chasing toddlers, and I felt so sick in pregnancy too. I can truly say that's the one time in my life I can look back in that season, and I could not feel God's presence, and it terrified me, because even I've struggled with depression off and on, but I can always feel his presence, but I could not in some of those years. And that's when I started studying Psalm 139. And the language in those verses 7 through 12, it's where David, he literally says, if I, ascend to heaven, like if I, and the language there talks about really like going off in places in pride, wanting to be things or comparing or doing things that God did not create me to do or did not give me, or descending and make my bed in Sheol, which is, or am in covering darkness. It says, even there you see me. And there was this sense of that's where I started learning it doesn't matter how I feel. God is with me. He is for me. And there's never a time when I'm alone. His presence is with me. And I think in these years with young children, you are building a muscle, even when you don't feel it, when you keep showing up with the Lord, when you keep having your time in his word, when you keep making that your priority, you're going to need it the older your kids get. In some ways, it gets easier physically, from a physical standpoint. It gets harder emotionally. It gets harder as your kids get older and their friendship dynamics and teenagers. You are going to need that time, that muscle of, I'm going to spend time with the Lord. I'm going to ground myself in his word, whether I feel like it or not. And I feel like these are the years that you're doing that. And what you're going to see is it's going to bear incredible fruit in you and in the lives of your children. Because what you're doing is you're laying this character foundation for them and groundwork in you and in your family that God is our person. He's our person, whether it feels good, whether we are left out or whether we're included. And all of a sudden, it will start to bear fruit in their middle years and then in their high school years. And so I think it's just, this may sound discouraging. You may not feel joy sometimes, but just know he is with you, and whatever, it's a season, and whatever you're putting into that relationship with him and keeping it first and foremost, no matter what you feel, it will reap a harvest. It will. And the decisions that your children make and the rhythms you're cultivating as a mom will carry you through all the way. And the time to start those rhythms isn't when your kids are older. It just gets busier.
Right.
Do it now. And you'll see. I don't know if that makes sense or if that helps them.
No, that's so encouraging on so many levels. Like even just the reminder that like it's not about what we feel all the time. Like we are held by God even when we don't feel it, like he's with us even when we can't sense his presence. Because the realities of like we do live in a physical body that feels exhaustion, and that like the brain fog of, having young kids, like that's all real. And so it might make us feel like we like our connection with God feels different before, but I almost feel like it's like a step of growth in faith to believe like I'm connected to God even when I don't feel it, and I'm going to like show up and spend time with him even when I don't feel like it, when I feel like I'm not getting anything out of it. Um and I love your reminder of like that does bear so much fruit in the long run, and the time to start is not 10 years from now.
No, yeah, it's so true. If I could go back to myself when I had kids your age and tell myself one thing, it would be, I was showing up with the Lord in my quiet times, but I wasn't doing like good work around my story or understanding why I was doing certain things in relationships. Or I wish I had started meeting with a counselor earlier and really when my kids were younger and really pressing into why am I pursuing certain friendships the way I am? Why am I disciplining out of so much anger sometimes? Why am I holding on to Jason for dear life? And helping me, because that's how we change is we tell our story to an empathetic listener and then they invite you to hear it through a different lens. And our neural networks are changed, but it takes showing up and doing that work with someone over and over and over again. Totally. So I wish I hadn't started when my kids were older. I wish I had made time, as hard as it was, to start when my kids were younger.
Yeah. Oh, I totally agree. I going to counseling has just changed my life completely. I feel like I went last week and I showed up and I started talking about something and like started crying and I was like, I am genuinely shocked by my tears. I'm so sorry. I didn't even know that I was emotional about this. Like just having this space with like someone who has they're just there for you. Like there's no other dynamics at play. I feel like it helps you to be really honest with yourself. And she just continually reminds me like we're not here to like fix you or figure you out. You're you're learning your own heart so you can bring it more fully to the Lord and so he can do the work, of growing you. And I just need that reminder all the time or else I slip back into my own autopilot ways of going through life. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
I think that in the same way, you just kind of have to show up, whether it's counseling or it's showing up with the Lord, no matter how it feels. And I'll never forget, I know one of your friends is Annie Hurley, her maiden name, but her mom, Trisha, told me years ago, she was talking about exercise, but it works for spiritual too. She said, sometimes you just got to show up. You just got to show up for even if you feel like it or not. And it's true. And those younger kids, when your kids are younger, it's the years of showing up, no matter if you feel like it or not. Trusting you're building good paths for your family and your feet that will last for the rest of their lives in your life. And the more you can create those paths and those rhythms and those when your kids are young, the more it'll be easier to walk in them when they're older and life gets busier. So just know you're doing a good work by showing up, even if you don't feel like it. So you're doing a great job.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hopefully it's sort of encouraging. But thank you for the good work you do for so many moms. And your writing is so encouraging and helpful and ministers to the heart. So appreciate that about you.
No, thanks, Susannah.
Okay, so how can people connect with you and find you and the work that you do?
Yeah. So my ministry, Renewed Motherhood, we put out a weekly devotional for moms in the little years. And we send these out through like a Substack newsletter. So it's renewedmotherhood.substack.com. And I tell people this is just kind of me processing through whatever, I'm currently going through in the little years. So it's very much like just coming alongside other moms, not trying to have all the answers, but just offering what the Lord is teaching me in this season. And right now, this year, we've been going through a liturgy season. And so each devotional has a liturgy for some of the everyday things in motherhood, like a liturgy for cooking dinner, a liturgy for disciplining a toddler, a liturgy for the newborn season, just all the little things. So yeah, we have the Renewed Motherhood Substack, and then we're also on Instagram at Renewed Motherhood.
That's awesome. Well, I'll put that information in the show notes so people know where to find you. But thank you.
Thanks, Susannah, and thanks for all of your just all of your teaching and writing too. It's been really impactful to me. So thank you as well.
Of course. Thank you. Well, would you pray for us and for moms as we close?
Yeah, I'd love to. Um, God, thank you so much for the honor it is to be a mom. We feel so ill-equipped sometimes, Lord, for the weighty responsibility that it is, but you knew what you were doing when you gave us our kids and when you made us. And so I pray that you would just help us to trust that and to trust that you will give us what we need when we need it. God, if anything, just help us to abide more deeply in you. And when we're struggling, just to turn to you first thing and to cry out, Lord, be with me now. Equip us for this holy work of raising kids and image bearers. And I pray just for each mom listening to this that you would just encourage her own heart with the truth that you're with her and that you see her and value the work she's doing. Thank you, God, for always being with us. Amen.
Amen. Thanks so much, Grace.
Yeah, thanks, Susannah.
I'm so thankful for the opportunity to learn from Grace Thweatt today. If you want to learn more about Grace and her ministry to moms, you can find the link in my show notes. Next episode, I will be talking to LPC Hannah Johnson about raising teenagers. Until then, if you're a mom in need of encouragement or know someone who is, my devotional book Known is a great resource to remind you you are loved by a good Father who knows you and helps you every step of the way. You can check out more of the resources I offer to help you in your journey of knowing God and being known on my website, susannahbaker.com. Remember, our struggles and joys are never for nothing. God uses them all to draw us into deeper relationship with Himself.